Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And T-Mobile took a loss here. They most definitely took a loss in this instant. So, great article from Mike Dano over at Light Reading. I will leave it in the description down below so you guys could check it out. In Oklahoma, T-Mobile suddenly faces a new 5G spectrum landlord. So to kind of summarize that very briefly for those of you who are new to the channel, T-Mobile outright owns some of the 2.5 licensing, and some of it they don't own at all. Some of it they lease. That's a very basic summary. It gets more detailed. There's EBS, there's BRS. Some of it they own, and some of it they 100% lease. So they have to pay another company to use the spectrum. And they have been fighting against the FCC and against the educational institutions that own the spectrum, that the spectrum should not be sold off. And if anything, it should be sold to T-Mobile. But T-Mobile was trying to lowball the educational institution. Like, no, we're not going to pay more than $5 million. We'll only give you $1 million and you give it to us. And they just effectively lost. In this case, the licensing was transferred from a Oklahoma educational institution to WCO. So WCO has now paid, and they now own the rights to the licensing of 2.5 in parts of Oklahoma. Now, this is still a very small footprint versus how large the 2.5 footprint is across the United States, but this doesn't play in T-Mobile's favor. Now they have to listen and own and operate 2.5 under a new owner, which could potentially lead to renegotiations in terms of how much is being paid for that licensing. That's why T-Mobile did not want the licensing to go to WCO, because they're a competitor. So now they have every right to charge T-Mobile more for the use of that license. Can that happen? Will that happen? Remains to be seen, but they have every right now to renegotiate. So T-Mobile, instead of being stubborn, they should have just went ahead, outbid WCO, said, okay, we're going to pay $10 million for it, and they would have likely owned the license or the licenses. So now that's done. That's no longer the case. The licenses are being transferred over to WCO under new ownership. And now, as the article states, T-Mobile now has a new landlord. And WCO is probably going to try other educational institutions too, across Georgia and plenty of others out there. So in the future, T-Mobile is, of course, going to try to acquire that spectrum and actually own it. But in order for them to be able to do so, as they're finding out now, they're going to have to pay. They're going to have to pay a good chunk of money to finally have outright ownership of all of the 2.5 licenses, not just some, all of it. In fact, it might end up in the billions, depending. I think there's about 2,500 licenses out there that they don't own, that they lease. And they may have to fork up big money here to be the outright owner, which the owner economics just work. They just make sense. Just like Verizon and AT&T are heavily focused on building out fiber because it has owner economics, they just work. It works, it saves money. So across the board, it's why you make that hefty investment at first, because the owner economics later on save you money. And it could play out the same way here for T-Mobile. We will see what they do in the future, but they definitely took an L here today. So make sure you guys like, share, subscribe to the channel. Follow my social media outlets for more updates and interactions. This is Tyrone with Tech Life. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.